today we decided to have a quick conversation with Brett, who I've worked with personally, and is a friend of mine, and we wanted to touch on the TattooGate scandal or incident that
I
everybody
hate that
seems.
name.
I remember when you shared that with me, Jack, and you were like, "They're calling it TattooGate now." I think it's ridiculous.
Like, okay, so the name just makes the whole thing even fucking stupider.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so I don't really think there's any reason to get into the details of what it is.
I
Because,
think a brief synopsis should be.
all right, well,
Sure.
let's. Anybody want to just touch on that and say what
Yeah.
it is?
So for those who don't know, which anybody in the tattoo industry I've heard about at this point, but long and short of it, there was an artist that charged for a consultation for a tattoo, and then charged on top of that a drawing, and I believe a deposit on top of that. Now, what the controversy, from what I gather, seems to be is that the amount charged for the amount of effort put into the drawing that the client received was outrageous, and I don't think the person ever ended up getting a refund or getting tattooed on top of that. So I don't think it's so much the principle that this person was charging money for those services, just the amount she charged in comparison to the actual work that she did, and kind of just blatantly the client got taken advantage of. So
Yeah,
it was something like
agree.
$2,600 for a drawing that looked like it probably could have been done in a minute, 2 minutes, like a sketch, not even a rendering. So yeah, everybody's pretty up in arms about it.
Yeah. Well, I think the response has been pretty intense, really. Obviously, against the
Sure.
person that is the cause of all this, the artist that did the worthless drawing and charged a tremendous amount of money for it, and a lot of people are also blaming, the people that are offering business advice and guidance for tattooers to create new revenue streams and things like that. And I don't know how I feel about people blaming anybody outside of the person that physically took advantage of their customer. Now, first of all, I want to say thank God that the customer brought it to everybody's attention so that other people can avoid getting scammed like this.
Sure.
Because it's definitely definitely not an ethical move on the part of the artist, in my opinion. Now, whether the artist was maliciously, deliberately trying to take advantage of their client, or just completely unaware of their worth and ability and skill set, and just overcharging because they're just dumb. I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The customer felt like they got taken advantage of, and the service that was rendered for the price was objectively bad enough that there's no arguing that. So
Yeah.
I want to say that.
The most ridiculous part of this to me is the artist that charged the drawing fee. I don't know who that is. I've been kind of following this, not like real close because I have a life. There's more important things to do. I don't know who the artist is that did that, but they're blaming a big name tattooer who advised some people that took a seminar, hey, you should, if you're going to be doing these huge drawings, you should charge for that time. And he's even apologized. He gave some people some advice, which isn't exactly bad advice. And everybody's mad at him, not the person that did this. Also, I mean, that yes, the customer got taken advantage of. The drawing was shit. It could have been done in 5 minutes. It's definitely not worth $2,600. But the artist knew that they were going to pay for a drawing. I'm assuming knew that they were paying for just a drawing, and that this wasn't going to go towards the cost of the tattoo. That's something I would have never, as a customer, I would have never have agreed to that in the first place.
Right. Well, I think too, with a lot of people getting to the camp that I see getting mad at the person putting on the seminars is more of like a traditional like walk-in camp of tattooer. And that was kind of my whole takeaway from this, is that you have multiple distinct like kind of subsets of cultures in tattooing now, where you have, not everybody comes up in a walk-in shop, right? Where that's kind of like a foreign concept. Now there are people, the person getting the seminar is more gearing towards people who are doing these large, elaborate pieces that take, multiple sessions, doing all these things like that. But I just think my main takeaway is there's just kind of multiple different subsets of tattooing now and different ways of going about it.
Yeah.
To where, you could sit here and bash the dude or bash people who are doing it, but I mean, it's not your type of tattooing. It's not, where you are at this moment, so as far as that, like, you have tattooers that work in walk-in shops or used to like doing, like consultations, maybe even drawing things on the spot, or you take a small deposit, you don't charge for the drawing, but you're also not doing that type of large scale work. So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think it is important to point out that tattooing is not a monolith, right? It's not one thing. It's many different people, many different processes, and many different points of view. And that, I think, has been a good thing in general for tattooing. It has kind of been this decentralized, fragmented industry that, because of that, it's been difficult for interlopers to get in and kind of penetrate and take advantage of and exploit the workers and the industry itself. But at the same time, it's caused this, I feel like, a lack of consistency in the passing down of ethics and, the right way for things to function among tattooers, because there's no accountability. People are just kind of like, I just do it my own way. And if you have 10 people, you're going to have 10 different ways to do it. Well, there's hundreds of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of different ways to do it. And there's always some shitty people that are either dumb or malicious that are going to take advantage of people. There's no way to avoid that. But, there's just so many different ways to look at things, and everybody kind of says, well, that's not the right way to do it. Well, maybe not for you, but clearly it works for some people.
Clay and I came up from a time where you had to be able to produce on the spot. And you know what I mean? A customer comes in and they're like, I want an eagle, you have to draw it right then. If it's not on the wall, you need to draw it right then, because you've got to get that money, because otherwise the customer's just going to go to another shop. And a lot of that is still true today, but you have a lot of artists that don't want to, or are just incapable of doing that. You know what I mean? Sometimes for certain artists, there's half a dozen different revisions and drafts before they finally get a drawing that they're happy with. When I was learning, those people just wouldn't have been in the tattoo business at all. Oh, you can't just draw this right now? Never mind,
Sure.
But tattooing now, we're attracting, the level of artists that we're attracting is at the highest level in the history of tattooing ever. The people now, the artists that are coming into this business are fucking phenomenal.
Sure.
So, not everybody's going to be able to operate the same. That being said, unless you're at the highest levels, you know what I mean? Like the alpha set of tattooers, let's call them, like, I don't, Jack Rudy or Ed Hardy or somebody like that, you probably shouldn't be charging $2,600 for a shitty drawing. You know what I mean? If Ed Hardy had done that drawing, it'd be worth it, Right.
Well, I think too, like, there's a like kind of like a pipeline now for like younger people. They're like phenomenal artists before they ever even picked up a pencil, which, like me, I got into tattooing before I really found interest in drawing. I drew here and there, but I kind of had to like hone my drawing skills to kind of like become a tattooer, because I really love tattooing. Whereas now I see a huge inverse of that. You have people, like you're saying, phenomenal artists, coming, a lot of them coming straight out of art school. I know in Jacksonville it's a huge thing. We have a couple art schools, like magnet schools, and then they're 18, they start tattooing off rip, but their tattoo ability is not caught up to their artistic ability. But feeling that their art is worth so much or so phenomenal, they're coming out the gate charging. And, I think a big part of that is, how do you get from an entry-level tattooer to that apex level without kind of going through that whole street shop experience and having, doing, I guess, the grunt work, you would say, to get to that point a lot of people that come in, they're just like, well, I'm appointment only, running it like a private studio, you know, in their first, second year of tattooing.
It's funny you mentioned that. My wife was talking to a coworker yesterday, and the coworker didn't know that, my wife was married to a tattooer, and she's like, "Oh, that's so cool." She said, "My niece went through an apprenticeship. She just finished her apprenticeship and has opened her own private studio now." And I've heard that story many times before, as people going straight from apprenticeship into one of these like salon loft places where they're paying, for a little space that's just them. I feel like that person's mentor kind of failed them. They're completely cut off from other tattooers now, and we learn from each other, and they've isolated themselves.
I think another thing to mention about that I rarely hear from anybody is that these people that learn how to tattoo and then go open their own shop, or they move around from shop to shop, 5 or 6 shops in 5 or 6 years, they're not in one place long enough to even see their fucking tattoos come back and see how they're healing. Like that is one of the biggest things that helps you improve, is seeing how your tattoo heals, seeing what you did in that particular tattoo, the needle configuration you use, the pigments that you use, part of the body that it's on, the kind of skin the customer has, all these different aspects of that. And if you're not seeing the tattoos come back for, 6 months, a year, 2 or 3 years, 5 years, how do you know how they look? You don't know what to change and what to tweak and what to improve on. You have to be in one place long enough to see that stuff come back if you want to be able to be a good tattooer, in my opinion.
I mean, I've changed wildly. I mean, even now, sometimes I'll try a new pigment and I won't use it again after seeing it. But you don't see those things for like at least a year. You tattoo somebody, so you have to be in one spot. You have to turn clientele and stuff. So yeah, it's the private studio thing too. I think it's a huge, like I said, I'm from Jacksonville, and it's a huge thing in Jacksonville right now. Like so many people can tattoo in a year. And then the kicker of that is they all have like 2 apprentices, a year. And then also have private studios, so it's oversaturating the market. And I feel like, I try to tell people, every time you do that, like you're making your like gross income like go down in some sort of way. When you're over flooding, simple supply and demand, me personally, that's how I look at it. I wouldn't want to train 8 people to go open up shops, on the same street as me, because that's just not financially viable. Not saying that we should, be, pretentious about, who we let in or whatnot, but,
I don't think most of those people are actually learning how to tattoo. I think that a lot of people have an apprentice so they can have a slave, so they can have somebody to take their trash out and go get them coffee and stuff like that. They're not learning how to tattoo. I mean, how many times back have you heard somebody say, "Oh, my apprenticeship was shit. I didn't learn anything. I fucking went and got coffee for these guys and swept the floor all day. That's it."
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of these people want sycophants too. They want the adoration of an apprentice, and I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, my apprenticeship was shit," and maybe it was, or maybe they didn't apply themselves. You know what I mean? I also don't think these first year tattooers that have their own private studio, they're not motivated by money. They're not thinking about how that could affect their income, if it will affect their income. If they were motivated by money, they'd be working in a busy walk-in shop. You know what I mean? Building a clientele, so then they can go open their private studio if that's the goal. There is a female tattooer in Orlando that used to work for us. She wanted to do appointment only. She went to a studio that did appointment only. That didn't work out. So she went to another studio that did appointment only. That didn't work out for her. So then she opened her own private studio in one of these salon places. It lasted 1 month. Now she's moving to a different appointment only studio.
Sure.
What's the common denominator there?
Well, I mean, you might probably not be, talented enough to, get clientele. No, the flip side of that is there are, in my experience, a lot of people that do that, and they do stay relatively busy. Which, I mean, more power to them, if you can do that.
Well, it's
Yeah.
not
What are your
impossible.
what are your thoughts on that though? Like, you know.
I think, I mean, if that's what the customer's into, you know, and I think there's a newer generation of customers that they kind of expect that experience.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
when they call the shop and they're like, "Hey, do you guys take walk-ins?" And I'm
I
like,
get that
"Yes."
all the time.
They're surprised. They're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa,
Yeah.
really? I could get tattooed today?" Like, yeah, you know, we're appropriately staffed to accommodate walk-ins every day. I mean, sometimes you got to wait, of course, depending on how busy we are, but and that surprises people, and it's usually younger people.
I think it might be a boon, honestly, to the walk-in tattooers that there are so many people, you know,
Yeah.
maybe giving that perception, because now we get to get busier. It's like, oh, there's
Yeah.
a shop doing walk-ins. That's amazing.
Yeah.
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 A lot of those guys also, when people do try to walk in and get a tattoo, they turn them down. You know, or they'll say like, "Hey, we don't do those kind of tattoos." Like they want a little Pinterest tattoo or something, a name. Like we don't do that. We only do this. They get these hyper specializations of you know some
Sure.
particular style, and that's all they want to do. Which, hey, man, that's cool with me.
I
But
love Pinterest tattoos.
I do too.
I have fun with it. I mean, my buddy comes over and he's like, "Oh, do you hate doing that?" And like, I was like, "I just built a house." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Not one of those light bulbs were paid with like baggers or Panthers. Like that's all Pinterest money, and it's great." Like, I don't like, you know,
Yeah.
like, I like my house.
Yeah, I used to tell people would bitch about doing Tasmanian devils because we did tons of them in the 90s. I'd be like, I love Taz. Like, he bought me that sweet motorcycle and my car and everything. You know what I mean? So, yeah,
sure.
I'm down.
Well,
So,
I think going back to you said too, and like me personally, like, you know, I worked a lot of factory jobs before I got into tattooing. I think when you have this, you know, you have this art school younger generation coming up, they've never, you know, I didn't start tattooing professionally until I was 25 full time. I was a piercer for a couple years before that, but I had all these odd jobs in between, you know, like working in factories as a forklift operator, you know, construction, roofing. So I feel like a lot of people, when it comes back like charging these outrageous prices, they've never had like a real world concept of money. They've never had a real job. You've never worked for $10 an hour. So like you're scoffing at like, well, why would I do that for $100? So it's like you're above making $100 in like 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Which I feel like, you know, like I said, with the walk-in versus the private thing, you're also dealing with two different clientels at that point, right? You're dealing with, you know,
Sure.
a roofer, or you're dealing with a lawyer or a doctor. You know, you're going to have a different kind of a client base and a different pricing model based on that. So,
Well, and some people need a little bit of time. They can't just walk in and get a tattoo. It's too big of a decision. They've got to think about it. They need time to get used to the idea, stuff like that. So for them, you know, having to set an appointment and come back, that works for them. And I'm certainly not knocking that. I have customers that make appointments with me. I take walk-ins, you know, and that's fine. But to get back to the TattooGate thing, at least for me, the time that I spend for their drawing, I am getting paid for that. They're not handing me money for that drawing right then, but that's worked into the price of the tattoo. You know what I mean?
sure.
And that's how it used to be. And I know, especially in other parts of the world, charging a drawing fee is completely normal. Clay, didn't you tell me in Japan that was like a separate fee that you had to pay when you got tattooed, was a drawing fee?
I don't know how they worded it exactly, but I definitely had to pay like $100, and I think it was more like an appointment fee, because when I got there, he had a couple of different images for me to choose from, and then he worked on it right then at that time too. So maybe I paid the drawing fee and then he drew it in front of me. Like I'm not exactly sure how I remember they explained it to me, but it was definitely like I had to pay $100 and I wasn't getting that money back no matter what. But it went towards a tattoo. Now that was definitely part of it. So that's a different thing than this incident. But you know, I got a small tattoo, man. It was a one shot, like the size of the palm of my hand, in a shitty spot on the back of my leg because I don't have a lot of places anymore. But I definitely had to pay like $100 or $120 at Three Tides when I got tattooed in Tokyo.
So I'm always used to
they
it.
explained everything. You know, it wasn't an unclear situation at all.
Yeah, I'm always used to, like, I take it off the price of the tattoo. Like, that's part of my deposit fee.
Yeah,
typically. And I guess about so much, usually whatever the shop's deposit fee is, that's what I'll usually, take from a client if I have an appointment.
Yeah.
I think in Jacksonville it's like $100, but generally if I have to set an appointment with you, your tattoo is going to be at least like $400 or $500, just based on the type of work you're getting. Because if there's anything like that, I'll just go draw it, on the spot.
Right.
It really depends on the volume too. If I have somebody walk in and they want something bigger and I know I can draw that day, but it's like a Friday and then they're open to making an appointment and I know I can like do 8 other tiny tattoos and make more money, and then have you come back on a Tuesday when it's slower. That's just kind of part of the hustle, trying to like maximize profit at that point.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
Well, that's another thing too. It's complex to be able to juggle walk-ins and appointments in a busy walk-in store, and have like plan and figure out like, oh, I can do this tattoo on this day, but I can handle these walk-ins today. That's something that makes some tattooers' life more difficult. And that is something that tattooers hate. They don't want their life to be more difficult. So they want to be as easy as possible. So they'll just do only appointments or only walk-ins, but doing a hybrid of that is actually pretty complex to be able to juggle all that stuff.
Sure. I usually try to typically like set my appointments in like the middle of the week, so like Tuesday or Wednesday or something.
Of course.
Try to keep myself open on weekends for walk-ins. So.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about these tattooers that are like, bigger name or well established, that are offering these kind of business advice to people? Because I think some of the advice is pretty damn good. I don't think that it's going to the right people necessarily. You have some one or 2 year tattooer who's charging $1,500 for some drawing fee and all this other stuff. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, how do these people think that's happening? And why are these guys that are offering this business advice doing that for people that aren't ready for it? I don't get it.
Well, I see a guy online that's offering business advice. I'm not really sure what his shtick is because it's free. And he's just like doing these reels on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, offering advice. And I've shared a couple with you because some of it is so wrong. It's fucking comical. But some of the times, the guy makes a really good point. And that's just out there for anybody. I think newer tattooers don't understand that, you're not there yet. You're not the $2,600 drawing fee level yet. But some of these other guys that are doing seminars and stuff like that, like the guy with, I'm not going to say his name, the guy with the TattooGate thing, you have to pay to take his seminars.
Okay.
And he has gotten to where he's at, not just because he's a good tattooer, but because of his ability to promote, and he's a good businessman. You know what I mean?
Marketing. Yeah.
And you got to get to a certain level before you can, before you should be charging somebody. I hate to word it like that because who am I to say what you should or shouldn't be doing? But before you should be charging the $2,600 drawing fee, you might probably want to start operating at the next level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But obviously somebody was gullible enough to pay it. And not even charging a drawing fee in of itself isn't bad. We've all had that customer that's made you make 1,000 revisions and you're like, motherfucker is never going to get this tattoo. They're just wasting my time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at that point, maybe you should charge. Be like, okay, look, you want more revisions? It's going to be $100. But at the end, they own that drawing. If they don't get a tattoo, that's theirs. You give them the fucking drawing, and y'all can go your separate ways. I had a girl that was so crazy about how she wanted this fucking rose. I think it was like 6 different revisions, and the last one, number 7, I just showed her the first one I drew, and she went, "Yes, that's perfect."
That's awesome.
You ever say they want it smaller and you go to the back and act like you're shrinking it down and bring it back out? They're like, oh, it's the perfect size. I do that all the time. It's my favorite.
Well, you can. There's a little trick here. I'm going to share this with you, Brett. When somebody says they want it smaller, you take the paper out, so it's only the image with no like sheet of paper around it, and you show them like, you want this smaller, right? And they go, yeah. Then you take that, put it right in the middle of the page, photocopy it, take it back with the paper around it, and be like this, right? And they're like, yes, that's smaller, because the paper makes it look smaller.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I actually hold it up to the body part where they want to get it for some perspective. And usually they're like, oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know,
People want them smaller and smaller now, too. Other people come in and like, I can't, you might as well not get tattooed. That's really big. I'm like, that's the size of my thumbnail. Like, it's like as small as I can make. I don't know what you want.
Yeah.
I used to work for a guy when if he walked by and you were doing a really tiny tattoo, he'd always go, "Oh, cool! You could come back later and get a magnifying glass tattooed around it."
I love that. I've never heard that before. That's great. That's fantastic.
I think back to your question too. I think a lot of it, when you have people charging money for seminars, I think that there's a financial incentive there. You got really successful off these seminars, off just your branding in general. I know a lot of people are doing with Procreate brushes, stuff like that. That's a whole nother revenue stream, because that's totally changed tattooing as well. Like as far as walk-ins, it makes it easier. And then as far as people giving free advice, I mean, that also, I mean, you kind of are the product. If you're on social media and you're getting all these followers and all this, generating all this clout and attention, that's another form of revenue there as well. So there's definitely an incentive, whether it's eyeballs or dollars, to kind of branch out and do more. And I don't, as far as why give it advice to like these people that aren't ready for it, I mean, where are you going to turn away money?
Well, okay. So let me put it like this. Then I understand what you're saying. Like I get it.
Sure.
But it's sort of like this. It's the same as somebody saying you shouldn't teach that person how to tattoo. Like that person is not right for tattooing. So you take that same standard, because I think we can all understand that, right? As tattooers, like there's some people that should not be tattooers. Absolutely. So you can figure that out with probably a little tiny bit of due diligence. So talk to somebody for 10 minutes and say, hey, I'm not fucking with this person. But the same thing can be said about giving advice like that to people. Like, are you vetting these people you're trying to give this business advice to? Like somebody that's been tattooing for 1 or 2 years has no business taking a seminar, learning how to get new revenue streams from booking fees and drawing fees and things like that. Like, you need to learn how to fucking tattoo first. Once you master that, then you can move on to marketing yourself and like building your clientele. And then you can move on to doing custom tattoos and like multi-session pieces. And then you can move on. Like there's a whole process that should occur before this happens. But does nobody care? Like what? I don't get it.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. As far as why, I don't want to make any ethical, judgments. I guess you have to ask them. But I think too, though, with the marketing and branding thing, right? Like tattooing is so warped, and it's not just tattooing; it's everything in the world now around social media, right? Everything is just driven by social media perception. And tattooing, I feel probably, this is just the world I work in. I feel like it's not an exception to that at all. So I feel like a lot of people do start off with like trying to brand and get a following before they're actually, focused on the other stuff first. Especially on Instagram, right? Like how many tattooers are famous off Instagram? Or like try to drive revenue off Instagram. Or like you see, famous, right? Insta famous. I should, but I think a lot of younger people chase that, right? Like that's like, so it might be a generational thing too. They grow up with phones. They don't remember the world prior to that. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, the people giving these seminars are not part of that generation, as far as I can tell. So.
No.
Well, the one guy I mentioned earlier that's like doing all this free advice online, He's definitely younger. I don't know how long he's been tattooing, but he's definitely younger, and he's a fucking good tattooer. He's got some funny ideas about how to run a business, but I mean, whatever. Most people that open tattoo shops probably don't know how to run a business. It's just, you know, through willpower or dumb luck or whatever that they actually make it, you know? I was astounded, and this isn't just with tattooing, but in general, during COVID and during the shutdown, I was talking to one of our landlords, and she's like, I've gone from being a property manager to a therapist.
Yeah.
He was like, none of these people don't know shit about business, or like, she said most of her tenants just, instead of like going through the bullshit to get PPP loans, just stuck their fucking head in the sand.
Yeah. That's easy.
And she was just like, yeah, she's like, the lack of like business skills these people possess is fucking frightening.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
it might not just be business skills they lack. It might be motivation, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy to get overwhelmed, especially when, you know, dealing with the fucking government, you know, they make that shit hard on purpose.
You're navigating those websites as hell.
Oh, yeah.
How do you not know how to build it? I can do this better on my iPad in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but that's a whole new issue. You know, you're talking about people giving seminars and stuff like that. It used to be a really normal thing for at a tattoo convention, you know, when back in the days when there was just a few, they would have seminars on a couple of the days that the artists could go to. You could pay some money and take this seminar. And I've gone to, you know, color theory seminars with Guy Aitchison and some machine building seminars and stuff like that. And I don't know about all of them, but I know a lot of them, it was whoever was putting on the convention would reach out to an artist and be like, hey, I love the way you do stuff. Would you be interested in doing a seminar for us? And that's usually how that came about. It wasn't the artist reaching out to the convention and be like, hey, let me do this seminar. You know what I mean? It was somebody, they were asked to do it. So they did it. I mean, there was a financial incentive there, of course.
Sure.
But, and like I mentioned, Guy Aitchison, you know, he put out a book and a video called Reinventing the Tattoo. And I know that when you bought that, he wouldn't just sell it to anybody. You had to be a tattooer. You know, it wasn't going to be a fucking instruction manual for somebody that hasn't had an apprenticeship.
Right.
It was geared towards people that already knew what they were doing. And a lot of that stuff back then was like that. Now there's just social media, the internet and everything has made it too easy to acquire stuff. And a lot of people just don't fucking care anymore. You know, not selling that to somebody who doesn't know how to tattoo is gatekeeping. And
Sure. But I think it's like, you know, it comes with the territory with the internet, right? Like everything's like catch out the bag. Like you can go on YouTube right now and watch like thousands of videos. So I think maybe a lot of people might have, like me personally, I wouldn't want to sell out tattooing like that. But I mean, maybe some people have like the opinion, you know, we're already here. There's no turning it back. You know, so
well, yeah. I actually
might as well profit off it while I can. And you know, I wouldn't do that personally, but
yeah. I have a girl that works for us, and she did everything wrong, but she's fucking awesome. She bought some equipment online during the shutdown, during COVID, and watched some videos on YouTube, tattooed herself and tattooed her friends, right? And then went to a tattoo school. And then she went and got a job at a shop. Like, I don't think she realized it at the time, that was absolute garbage, and then came to work for us, and she's fucking awesome.
Sure.
And now that she has a little bit of knowledge, she's like, oh Jesus, what was I thinking? But it fucking, that and determination got her where she's at now. It worked for her.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would never advise somebody to do it that way, but you know,
I think tattooing finds the people that belong here a lot of times.
Yeah.
You know? So that's good. I mean, it's sad that she had to go through all that. And I mean, I can't even imagine the kind of attitudes that she caught from telling people like, oh, I bought some equipment and started tattooing, went to tattoo school. Like, I can't even only imagine, you know, the torment that she faced telling people that.
Yeah, I don't think she told people a lot because she had worked for us for probably 6 months before she told me.
Okay. So, but something probably told her not to say that. Like she
Right.
experienced something
Yeah.
like, whoa, I'm
Yeah.
not doing this anymore. Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people that don't even know that it's something frowned upon, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're from outside tattooing, how would you know? There was actually a shop in Orlando that was, I mean, they had a fucking predatory apprenticeship program where they were seeking out primarily young females, charging them a bunch of money for an apprenticeship where they didn't learn shit, but they kept telling these girls that women aren't welcome in the tattoo industry and how fucking lucky they were to be slaves at this fucking shop that they paid all this money for. And that was really drilled into these girls' heads that, they were lucky that they were being taken advantage of by this shop because nowhere else in tattooing was going to be an opportunity for them because we're all fucking, chauvinist assholes.
Yeah.
It was fucking crazy. I hired one girl out of that. She went and told her friends, and within a week, I'd hired 4 people out of there. They're top 4 people. And they're gone now. So
yeah, the shop is gone.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, that's another thing. Like shit that is predatory like that never lasts long. Like, so for example, if you're going to be some shitty artist that's charging people deposits for not deposits, but a booking fee and drawing fee and all these other things and not ever providing a service for somebody, you can't do that for long. People are going to find out and they're going to say, I'm not putting up with that shit.
Well, look what happened to the individual in the TattooGate thing. I mean, I doubt that person will ever have a job again, case in point. So.
People will forget about it. It's some girl.
Well, yeah, sure.
So it's a girl. She's going to have another spot somewhere. I'll tell you right now.
I honestly have never seen anything with her name in it.
I saw somebody posted a picture of her and like the name of her shop and with her name and everything, but it wasn't a comment from her. It was like, this is a person.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There'll be some new outrage in a couple of months and she'll be fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And hopefully she learned a lesson,
Oh, I'm sure she did. She's probably, the poor girl's probably tormented right now.
She's my God.
Curled up in a ball, crying and just sad as fuck, like depressed, borderline suicide over this thing, and that she probably had no idea she was even doing anything wrong. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt because I always do that without knowing anything otherwise. I'm just going to assume she's not a bad person. She's Canadian, so I can go either way.
Well, she's got money for therapy now. So.
Yeah. Well, that's yeah, of course. That's good.
Well, info.
Is there anything else you guys think that needs to be addressed in this topic? I mean, I the issue itself is whatever, but I think the response to it is really what I thought was interesting.
Yeah, the response is ridiculous, and it's a lot of fucking virtue signaling cunts. Yeah. I've seen some people make some good points, and I've seen some fucking hilarious memes about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, internet, for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Internet undefeated.
But yeah, so much virtue signaling. It's just ridiculous. A drawing fee in of itself isn't a bad thing. I don't do that, but I understand why some people would. And if you are, a top tier tattooer, I totally get it because, there's a huge demand. You only have so much time, and charging fees like that is definitely going to separate the wheat from the chaff. You know what I mean? You're only going to get the most serious clients that want the big pieces and can afford that if you're doing that. But first year tattooer, probably not a good idea.
Well, I think a lot of people doing the virtue signaling, like you're saying, are probably first year tattooers yourselves, right? So
I don't know, man.
Not
I don't
everybody,
know.
Not everybody. You have a lot of people virtue signaling, for whatever reason. But yeah, my closing thought, just I think there's nothing inherently wrong with charging drawing fees or anything like that. I think the main issue I saw with it was just the amount of effort given.
Yeah, that was awful.
To the price point. But other than that, I mean, like I said, like tattooing's changing. There's multiple different cultures in tattooing, and like all you can really do if you want to like make an impact on it is like put out better advice.
Yeah.
Be
Well,
the change you want to see in it instead of just bitching on the internet. where
I
things like
think
this come in handy. So
yes, I think the main thing I personally take away from this that is good advice for everyone is be good to your customers and treat them well. Otherwise, somebody else will.
Yeah.
That's really what I get out of this,
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, just be clear with the customer, and as a customer, you should make your expectations clear to your artist. And, because as artists or customers, we all have expectations from each other and maybe some preconceived ideas of how it's supposed to be. And everybody needs to be on the same page, explain things fully to your customer. And if you're worried about, explaining some shit to your customer, maybe you need to re-examine your business practices.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Transparency is important. All right. Thanks, guys. Hey, Brett, can you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, follow you, things like that?
Yeah. So my main avenue is on Instagram as far as where I do most of my business outreach. It's Patches Tattoos on Instagram, and then I'm traveling between Ballet Art Studio in Jacksonville, Florida, and Atomic Tattoos down in Tampa, Florida. So I relocate here full time.
Right on.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank
you
guys.
It was nice to meet you.
All right. As well. Have a good one.
All right.
Yep.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to I Love Tattooing, hosted by Jack and Clay. Our website is ilovetattooing.com. If you'd like to contact us, we can be reached by email, clay@ilovetattooing.com, or jack@ilovetattooing.com. Please email us if you have questions or comments, or show topic ideas you'd like to hear us discuss.